Hey, thanks for joining me. My brother came and visited me recently. No, he's not here this time. But as far as like we did a couple of videos where we talked about some comic books together. We only got to do two for the short time he was able to be over here. But he brought me a comic book. Well, he actually brought me two. Um, do I have the other one right here somewhere? Oh yeah, he brought me a nice fresh copy of the X-Men Wildcats Golden Age, where Travis Charest drew this. I've still got my original copy, but mine's pretty beat to hell. And this one he gave me is almost in like flawless condition. And he brought this one because the one that I have is the Jim Lee cover, and much rather have the Travis Charest cover. But I got another copy of this thing, and it's in like pristine condition. And I mentioned that because when I pulled both of these books out of their packages, they're like this Gen 13 #1 is in like extremely nice condition. Now, I don't collect these for their like financial value. I'm looking for just to double check if this is a first printing. Yeah, it is. March of '95. I was just about to graduate high school, but first printing. But yeah, this book is in fantastic shape. But I don't collect these and keep these things because I want them in flawless condition because it's a collectible worth money. I do take care of my comics. I keep them. I keep them bagged and boarded and in boxes, and but if they get creased or something like that, I don't lose my mind. I don't really care because I enjoy the contents inside them. I'm not a collector of I don't get these because they're collectible. I get them because they're fun and entertaining. Anyway, so it's just kind of interesting to have such a nice, a copy in such good condition. But Gen 13 #1, the regular series. There's the mini series and then the regular series. Now I've been covering Gen 13, and I had never seen the mini series until recently. It's on my channel. I maybe did that. I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, something like that, because I had never got to see it. But I finally got my hands on some copies of it, and I've talked about how I recognize that when it came out, everyone was saying that it was the big popular thing. It was a very much of a rising star, specifically with the artist, J. Scott Campbell. We all love him. And but I wasn't a fan of his work to start. It just wasn't anything that really interested me. But it was issue either 4 or 5 of this regular series where I finally thought that the art was interesting enough that it made me start picking it up. And then I've collected anything that J. Scott Campbell has drawn ever since then. But as far as the regular series, I've never actually seen the books. So this issue 1, like I don't have issues 2, 3, and maybe 4. I've never seen those. But now I get to see what issue 1 of the regular series is like. And it's not too bad. It has some things that work kind of well, and I think it all kind of hinges on, again, rising star J. Scott Campbell. The characters are mildly interesting, but the thing that hurts this thing the most is that it's all about these kids living in and talking like kids of the era it was born in, that they existed in, and the vernacular that they use, the catchphrases that they'll spout, boy, are they dated, and it sounds really dumb in retrospect. I kind of feel like the book, I don't know. I want to say that the book might have aged better if they left out all the silly kind of like popular phrases of the era, because it sounds just as stupid as you might think. It's like thinking back in the 60s when people were like groovy baby, like Austin Powers bullshit. Like no one talks that way now, and it dates it and it makes it not kind of as enjoyable. There's some of that goes on in here. But there's some humor, and there's some, I got to say, admittedly pretty good art from J. Scott Campbell, even though this was before he really caught my attention. As a cover, it's kind of fine. It's just a group of them standing there. J. Scott Campbell's kind of refinement of his female figures is not at the level that it will soon be. It's a little bit more cartoony and a little bit more exaggerated. and in a way that I'm not a particularly big fan of. But he eventually, like I said, he gets to a point where I'm like, okay, now he's just absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to see it. But Grunge right here, throwing up that stupid expression on his face and throwing up the, the pinky and the thumb, like, I get it. It just feels a little goofy, but there's a lot of kind of cliche things that go on in this book that, kind of work against it, but it worked just fine with it when it came out. So hard to say. I do have to say that, man, Campbell's work is like, if I feel like this guy advanced faster than most other artists. Like, there's a lot of brand new artists who show up and we got to watch them grow in real time. Like Travis Charest when he showed up with Wildcats, Michael Turner over at Top Cow. There was a lot of artists that showed up and they all progressed quickly and all got really good really fast. But in my mind, it kind of feels like Campbell accelerated quicker than anybody to get to that like supreme level that they ended up at. It's really fantastic stuff. So you start out with a couple of warriors fighting. And if you notice, I'm like, oh, this guy's got the round hat and electric powers. I'm like, it's not going to be much of a surprise when we flip the page over and discover that this is just us looking at in a more realistic kind of context. But somebody's playing Mortal Kombat. This is just a video game, and the characters are speaking from the voices of the characters playing the game. But it's kind of fun. You get Hot Girl and Ninja Guy, and you get some blood and guts as they slash each other. It's all kind of good. But the Campbell's art, I feel like you can tell he's still trying to do that. It's kind of like Wildstorm style, Jim Lee kind of homage thing, but still having his kind of cartoony, fun style. But it all comes together pretty damn well. But yeah, it's Grunge and Roxy, and they're playing a game called Mortal Conflict. It's fun. So you got kids playing video games. That's fun. Grunge is pissed that he loses, and Roxy's kind of giving him shit. I as time goes on, I used to think Grunge was kind of funny. He's supposed to be the big dumb doofus of the group. He's the one that gets kind of obnoxious and annoying and kind of grates on me more than anybody else. I kind of get sick of this guy, I gotta be honest. Not to the degree that it ruins anything, but it's like, oh God, he's just such a dumb chucklehead. The humor surrounding him kind of loses its appeal for me pretty quickly. But the art's looking pretty damn good. Like Campbell, like, man, I just wonder if people in the studio at the time were watching him and just kind of going like, this guy's going to be a superstar. I wonder if they could see it coming. But yeah, they're going back and forth, and so Grunge, because he lost, he pulls the cartridge out of the game player so the game doesn't save, giving her the higher score. So she uses her powers to float him in the air. They're kind of playfully fighting. She drops him on his ass. But while he's there, he accidentally pulls out a bunch of power cords. He's like, oh shit, just shut the power off to a bunch of shit. I hope I didn't hurt anything. Did I? Caitlin Fairchild, who was just sitting off to the side on her entire computer gear setup. She's like, no, it's fine. I got everything backed up. And of course, Caitlin Fairchild, she was like the skinny little kind of mousy nobody girl who gets the powers of like a super Amazonian god, a super tall body, big muscles. Her tits grew, her ass grew. She becomes this hyper beautiful, super powerful girl, but she still got the personality of a nerdy little nobody, which is an interesting kind of dynamic depending on how you write it. To have nerdy nobody in giant hot body, kind of like in the new Jumanji movies when the nerdy guy gets transferred into the game and he's in The Rock's body. That shit's funny. Or the nerdy girl gets transferred into Ruby Roundhouse, super hot badass babe. It's kind of a similar concept, so it's kind of fun. But Campbell putting in the detail of all the computer keyboards and the cabinets, the ground, the wires. There's a bookshelf, spiral notebooks, just a little Gumby action figure of all things. Just all the detail there. The only thing that kind of stands out to me that's kind of weird in this shot is kind of the bent legs and the little pointed toes. That's a little like, why she got pointed toes? It's just, who cares? It's just a minor thing. But she's telling him that everyone needs to be a little bit more serious. If we're going to work as a team, and if I'm going to be a team leader, you guys need to take things more seriously. Instead of playing video games, we should be training. We should be practicing. We should be taking things more serious. This is a good opportunity. And they're like, yeah, maybe, okay, but what do you want from us? What exactly are you asking? She's like, I don't know. I'm supposed to be team leader, but I can't do everything by myself. She's like, we should just take more responsibility for ourselves. And they start joking around again, and Roxy kind of makes Grunge float in the air and slams his ass down on the ground again, which pisses off Caitlin. She walks off. She's kind of had enough of their crap. I think it's kind of interesting having Grunge hit the ground and having the crack of his impact kind of come outside of the border. That's interesting. That's kind of a different thing. So Caitlin wanders into some other part of the house that they're in. She finds a picture of Indiana Jones on the fucking wall. And but apparently that's supposed to be Lynch when he was younger. And she's like, oh, look at Lynch before he got his cybernetic eye. He looks like he might have been happy back then. And, of course, Lynch just shows up and startles her. And he's like, hey, something's bothering you. Why don't you tell me what it is? That shot of Lynch, it's pretty good, but some's a little bit kind of like off about it that doesn't quite look right. I'm only put that in the context of if Campbell were to do this again today, it would be like perfect because he knows exactly what he's doing. But all things considered, how early he was in his comic career, I'm going to guess, what did he have? The Gen 13 miniseries under his belt, so 4 comics, and now this is number 5, I think. To see the level that he's accelerated from just the miniseries to this, it's kind of astounding. And you know, I might be kind of like looking at it and seeing something looks a little goofy somehow. It's still pretty impressive all the same. But the story, Caitlin's like, it's just nothing's wrong, it's nothing important. He's like, yeah, come on, whatever, tell me. And so she's just nervous about being put team leader, and maybe she shouldn't be because she doesn't have the experience. He's like, no, come on, you've proven yourself. You're going to be a good team leader. You're going to run this group. Everything's going to be fine. Trust me. All right. And she's happy. Everyone's just excited. So, well, damn, something just kind of makes your eye focus on this page. But before we get there, Caitlin decides to join the crew back out there in the living room again. You got Burnout playing a guitar and Grunge is playing video games again. They're like, hey, where'd Roxy go? Like, she stormed out of the house, probably went to the dance clubs because that's what she does. And then they got their little in-house living maid. I don't know where this was established. I'm going to assume in the miniseries. This girl's like a robotic android. But she's bringing lemonade, and then in the background, you see somebody strutting along behind them. And they're like, oh, hey, Sarah, nice to see you. Hello. So there's Sarah Rainmaker strutting out to go to the pool. Now, you know, this is one of those things where the guy's writing the book. Well, the writing, it's Brandon Choi with J. Scott Campbell on script and story. No Jim Lee yet, which is kind of interesting because I'm pretty damn sure that Jim Lee jumps in to help write these fucking things shortly thereafter. I'm almost certain of it. I could be wrong. Correct me, but I just wonder if it's a case of Jim Lee going, oh, this book is really popular. I better start help writing it because I need my name attached to something that's super popular. They should have just left it up to J. Scott Campbell. Brandon Choi don't write anything interesting. But they need to interject the sexuality. And I'm kind of fine with it. I can see how some people would look at this and go, it's a little gratuitous. It's a little ridiculous. I guess both things are kind of true, and I don't care. I'm fine with it. The thing I had the most, it's kind of like, I don't want to say a problem with, is that she's so dead serious. She's like the super serious girl. Obviously, if you know the comics, that she's into girls, not guys. I can't remember where that was revealed. I don't know if that was revealed. I think that comes later on. I think. But anyway, just the way she talks, and then they get into some kind of like cliche Native American stuff, which I don't know. I don't know enough about Native American cultures of any type to really speak on it, but I also feel like the writers don't know anything about it, and so they just use cliche shit that sounds like something that you'd see in a movie, but written by somebody who doesn't really know anything about the cultural norms. I could be way, way overthinking it, but she's like, as she says here, the heat feels simply delicious. It reminds me of the sweat lodge back on the reservation. Now, I believe that they said that she's Apache, and so I would assume Apache has sweat lodges. So if that's correct, then okay, I guess it's accurate. But I don't know. It just kind of feels weird. And they get into it a little bit more later. Of course, the live-in maid, she's freaking out. What the hell are you doing? Of course, they do the thing with her arm across the front of the girl just because she's, standing around there undressed, going to jump into the pool. Of course, the guys are just having a great time. You got the shot of her coming out of the water with the border covering up the edge of the fun parts. And, Rainmaker being so dead serious. She's just such a free spirit. It's not as nice as the freshwater spring back home, but it'll do. What's wrong with you guys? Not afraid to get a little wet, are you? Is she getting a little wet? I don't know. It's totally gratuitous. It's kind of silly. It's kind of fine. Well, got to flip the book over. I do like this hyper-tilted, low-angle, Dutch angle shot, low angle on this, just a silhouette shot of this dance club, and this kind of the silhouette figures that are going into it. It's kind of cool. This looks like something that J. Scott Campbell would do a lot more in Danger Girl, this kind of extreme angle shot. And of course, we get Roxy hanging out, and Campbell's going to put the characters in like modern clothing as much as he could. I'm pretty sure I remember reading him saying that he'd go to the supermarket and pick up like teen magazines to get pictures of modern fashion to put the characters in. This is where the book kind of starts falling apart a little bit in terms of writing, and I'm going to put this right on Brandon Choi. It's filled with text boxes saying really fucking nothing. It's the nightlife is this, and the city of San Diego has its own unique blend of its after hours entertainment. Excuse me. For the younger set, there is the Gaslight District where blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. Just a bunch of text kind of like trying to make it sound like it's so interesting and giving all kinds of backstory that you don't need to know anything. It's a San Diego dance club. Roxy's there and she gets going. But all this text is like she wants to have an escape from all the personality conflicts and academic pressures at the La Jolla Beach house. Blah, 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 blah. Failing to notice the creepy sex perv at the bar that's just watching her. Campbell does a great job of having all these different characters and all these different outfits, make it look like she's dancing. Like, art is fantastic. The script in this thing, in terms of like the narration, is just over the top. It's dumb. But she's out there, she's dancing, and she kind of accidentally bumps into the dude, knocks her hat off, and he hands it back to her. He's like, "Oh, this belongs to you, pretty lady." She's like, "Oh my gosh." And she kind of gets lost in his eyes and almost starts making out with him. But then Doofus in the background accidentally spills a drink on her, kind of busting her out of what appears to be, in retrospect, maybe some kind of trance. So I think this is setting up something to come in the future. So Roxy has to go into the bathroom and wash herself off. She's trying to rinse off her jacket. And while she's doing that, there's a strike of lightning outside. And it must have hit somewhere close. It knocks the lights out for some reason. And then, so she put her jacket on the ground. She's looking out the window. And then we see this little silhouette shot of some weird creature thing. It's kind of unclear, but this creature thing is sneaking into her jacket. She's like, "Well, that's strange. The storm came out of nowhere and just seemed to have disappeared." So I'm not sure I understand the significance of a storm showing up and taking off. It might have something to do with something that I'm unaware of. But it just did. Storm shows up, blows things, lightning, takes the lights out, and the lights come back on. Little creature snuck into her jacket. She's like, "All right, well, back to the dance floor." Okay, let's go. Meanwhile, outside, you got some homeless chud sitting in the alleyway, probably thinking about how he saw Spawn crying in the alleyway earlier. And then a teleportation portal opens up, and Hot Girl steps out. And she's like, "Yep, we're here. Teleportation point clear." But there's no sign of the Queelock. And so homeless bum guy is like, "Hey there, pretty lady. Is this just a dream?" And she's like, "More like a nightmare, old man." Now she's got on her back the staff with the pointed triangular dagger thing. And I'm like, that is specifically the weapon of the coda from the Wildcats. I'm like, oh God, do we have to have the coda in this thing? I mean, it is set in the Wildstorm universe, so I guess. I don't know. But other figures keep coming out of the portal. Back at the Gen13 headquarters, an alarm goes off. Lynch sees it, gets up to the computer and see there's a bunch of alarms going off showing that there are superpowered beings out there, including Roxy. Like, she's out there somewhere. Fairchild wakes up. Of course, she's in nothing but a t-shirt and little underwear. I've got to have the little sexy going on. She's like, the alarms woke us up. What the hell's going on? He's like, come on, we got to go help Roxy. Something bad is happening. Let's go. Back at the club, some people are trying to get inside. The guy who's watching the door is not going to let him in, but then I guess they put, it looks like a big fat black dildo under his chin, but it's probably a gun barrel. Whoever these people are, which we see right here, they go into the club and they're just disgusted by these bunch of chuds here just dancing. And so you got hot girl and tough-looking guy, and then scrawny, tough-looking guy, and short, techno-tough guy. And, of course, they tell us their names by talking to each other. Her name is Jade. This guy over here is called Rake. This guy is called Hardball. And this guy is One-Eyed Jack. So One-Eyed Jack, Hardball, Rake, and Jade. I don't remember these characters at all. And again, I started reading Gen 13 from whatever it was. I think it might be issue 5, like I said, all the way up until J. Scott Campbell was done. And then as soon as he was off the book, I'm pretty sure I dropped it immediately. But that's like up to issue 20, I think it is. And I don't remember off the top of my head ever seeing these characters before or since. So I wonder if these are one-offs. So anybody who knows, you can tell me. I'd be kind of curious. There's nothing really interesting about them. You know, I'm going to assume that Campbell had a hand in designing them because they look better than kind of your standard Jim Lee, Brandon Choi designed villains in the Wildstorm universe, which is all a bunch of boring shit. But they're there to find the Queelock. Something that's hilarious. And I'm like, oh shit, is this like an actual dig at each other? On the wall, there is this poster. And it's kind of cut off a little bit by the text box. But it's very obvious that it says Fragaboom live. So that would be a reference to Dan Fraga, the guy working over at Extreme Studios. He was drawing... he did Berserkers, and he did, I think, Bloodstrike to start. And apparently, I've never actually seen it, but I know that he's a guy that has dabbled in rap and music and stuff like that. But there's a flyer for him doing a live showing, and then there's another flyer stamped on top of it, like taped up, that says, show canceled due to overwhelming lack of interest. Like, I'm like, is there beef between Campbell and Fraga, at least in this era? I can't imagine that Choi would put that up there. That's way too clever. So I'm going to say that that's a Campbell thing. And I don't know. Maybe it means nothing. I'm sure some of you out there might know more than I do off the top of my head. But there's one thing to kind of like give a good-natured ribbing to your buddies, but that's actually kind of fucking brutal. Like, that's kind of harsh, and I think it's hilarious. I don't know anything about Fraga. I don't have anything negative to say about him. I mean, I've given his art a bunch of shit when I review any of the books that he drew back in the day. He was not that great in terms of being a storyteller. Like, Campbell's 1,000 times ahead of him at this era. But just to show, show canceled due to overwhelming lack of interest, like, that's a kick in the nuts. So I'm really curious if there was some kind of like a micro feud. But in terms of like comic artist with hell of a career and skill and talent, I mean, Fraga eventually developed for sure. And he's pretty dang good. I follow his Instagram. He can draw, like, there's no doubt about it. But the work he did in the early days can't hold a candle to Campbell's work. So anyway, If anybody knows, please in the comments let me hear about that. But here we go. Continuing. Yeah, they're in there to find Queelock, and so they got to find him. Anyway, they get a little scanner, and they notice that, oh, this girl, she's got it. Now, I was looking, like, again, Campbell does this thing on occasion where he'll have generic background characters, but then sometimes he'll have background characters that look very specific. And I'm looking at these guys, and I'm like, these guys must be somebody. Like, I forgive me if I get the names wrong, but Scott Weiland, like lead singer to Stone Temple Pilots, it kind of looks like him. Am I wrong? And this guy looks kind of familiar. What's the name of that guy? Is married to Gwen Stefani for a while. I'm probably way the fuck off. I don't know. But they look like they are supposed to be somebody, not just rando background characters, especially because the other background characters are kind of faded. But they are very prominently colored. So, I don't know. Anyway, they're like, this girl has it. So Roxy just decides, she's like, all right, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but she gets out of there. Like, she's smart. She doesn't just sit there. She doesn't try to fight. She's like, I'm gone. That's a pretty good kind of up angle shot on this guy. He's like, hey, well, whatever the hell's going on with this girl. So he gets out his giant black dildo gun, points it at her, racks it, is going to shoot at her, I guess. And so this was a little bit like, is she up at the roof of the building and she's flipping around, avoiding the shots? I guess that's what's going on. But then, so she decides to stop getting shot at, so she drops down behind a bar. And then I'm sitting here looking at the guy, One-Eyed Jack, and I'm like, wait, does this motherfucker have an arm growing out of his back? There's his head, there's one arm there, there's one arm there, and there's an arm growing out of his back. I'm like, is this, what? So I went back to look, and it is not super obvious. I do see over here this hand holding a gun, but it just looks like it's this guy's hand. Shoulder, and they would come down, and then there's that hand, because you're not expecting guy to have 3 arms. And maybe that's built into the narrative, like you're not supposed to know. But you also see that this guy's got his hand here, so his arm comes down and hand like that. But I'm like, this guy's gag, his visual gag, is he's got an arm growing out of the back of his spine like a twin brother that never really developed, and so, but it can move. That's weird. I get the kind of like idea to like, let's make something goofy and strange. I don't know that works. I don't know. We'll see. But hey, the girl, she dropped down. We got to get her. Anyway, you got to have the obligatory, like, it's time to have a sexy shot of the girl, which we've had. She's on the ground. She's hurt. And then that's when she notices in her jacket is this weird little creature thing. And so I know that this goofy little creature thing has been in the books for a long time, but I never knew where it came from. And it's just here. And these monster bad guys are chasing that. That's kind of weird. I'm like, really? Oh, whatever. I don't know what the fuck it is. And so she says, stop the press. That's why those mutant freaks are after me. That's more of that like dialogue that sounds kind of goofy. And then, of course, we get the unnecessary, like, spread leg underwear shot. Look, I don't mind sexuality, but there's, like, it just feels a little unnecessary. Here's my other problem. This is a fucking, like, 15-year-old girl. If I understand the age is right. She's the youngest out of the group. 15, 16, that's a little creepy. Again, I understand these books were marketed to teenagers, and teenagers at the time would not have cared. But these are grown men writing these books. And I feel like that's, like, I'm not trying to be a prude, guys. Like, if you watch my channel, you hear what I talk about. You see my own art. I draw female figures all the time. And I will draw nude female figures all the time. I have no interest in drawing underage teenage girls showing their underwear shots. Like, it's just, it just sits a little off with me as an almost 50-year-old man now. But right then, boom, there's the team. The rest of the team has shown up. They're in their outfits. They're all looking hot and awesome. Low angle shot looking up at them. And so the bad guys turn and look like, holy shit, I don't know who these guys are. What the fuck? Anyway, fight's on. Guy's got Roxy. Like, he's got her by the throat. She's choking out. Grunge is pissed. So I feel like this thing happens a couple times in this book. Like, Roxy jumped up. She went up and tumbled around in the air and landed on the ground. So now Grunge jumps in the air, tumbles around, and lands on the ground. Pretty sure it happens again in the book. But he lands in front of the hot girl. He's like, whoa, babe alert. Now what's a hot chick like you doing with these ugly losers? She's like, I'm going to slaughter you and I'm going to kick your ass. He's like, yeah, right. Time for a reality check there, babe. Again, the dialogue sounds kind of cringy, but it was kind of, appropriate to the culture of kids at the time, but it certainly dates the shit out of it. So hot half-naked girl beats the shit out of him, bam, bam, and kicks his feet out from under him, and he lands on the ground. And then this is a thing that Campbell likes to do. It's that whimsical kind of cartoony thing where like the little tweeting sounds because he got his bell rung, and it's just the hot girl kind of dancing around his skull. And he's like, duh, look at all the pretty girls, I think she really likes me. Again, I get what they were doing for the time, but in retrospect, now it really reads kind of stupid. I should mention, talking about the art, I've been hyping up Campbell, but I can't forget Alex Garner on inks. That guy was a fantastic freaking inker from the word go, it seems like. His shit looks incredible. And him and Campbell stayed together for a long time. Did the Danger Girl, right? I'm not misremembering that. I've got it right here. This hasn't actually left my sitting right next to me ever since I picked it up and did the video on it. Yeah, Alex Garner. Yeah. Those two worked together forever. Great work all across the board. So now, Rake, the weird, creepy, spindly guy, he's going to face off against Rainmaker. Now, she does the jump, tuck in the air, land on the ground. So that's like 3 times in the book. It's like somebody really likes this action shot. Like, I'm going to jump over somebody. Rainmaker jumps, flips, lands, and she zaps behind her. And she's got these gauntlets on her wrists that are supposed to amplify her electric zapping powers. She's like a walking taser. It's probably more intense than that. Burnouts, flying around, shooting fire shots, hitting One-Eyed Jack. They should call him three-armed chump rather than One-Eyed Jack. Hits him, knocks him down, and then Fairchild shows up, and again, big sexy shot with long leg, kicking the shit out of his face. Again, an element that Campbell adds. I mean, just the layouts and everything. Like, these pages look dynamic and fun and energetic and interesting, just visually. But something that makes Campbell stand out is, like, look at this boot on Fairchild. Like, he does it kind of on everybody to a degree, but he'll put a full-on, like, thick boot with tread and patterns and shapes that make it look like a thing that's actually slipped onto her foot. It's not like a spandex sock like everyone else does, myself included, in my own crappy bullshit fan comic nonsense. He's actually giving her like gear that has detail, and it looks great. But yeah, kicking the shit out of this guy, back with Grunge and Hot Girl with the Coda knife. Oh, it's a double-ended Coda knife. She's going to stab him. She's saying that you were kind of cute in a stupid sort of way. Okay. But she's like, whatever, I'm going to stab you to death. And of course, Grunge gets to use his powers, which is he can absorb the elemental properties of various materials around him. Metal, stone, plastics, water, I don't know. Grabs the blade, says, think again, biatch. And now I guess, I don't know if absorbing the properties and making himself metal makes him stronger. It is interesting that he's absorbing the metallic kind of properties there, but it's not visually shown there. So it's like, I wonder if Campbell kind of forgot to draw that in that panel. Not complaining. His pages look great. Flips her over, sends her flying. There she goes flying in the background as Rainmaker looks like for a second that she's struggling with this Rake guy, but he comes charging with his hand, and she just grabs his hand out of the air and electrocutes the shit out of him. And then as she gets up, she says, "Your claws may be fearsome weapons, Rake, but they're no match against the fighting spirit of an Apache warrior." That shit sounds kind of dumb. Like, I am all about a character being of various cultural and ethnic backgrounds. Of course, that's humanity. That's the human experience. I'm all for someone being proud of and honoring and respecting the traditions and cultures which they exist in. But I just feel like it sounds stupid. Like, to drive it home that she's so connected to her own culture on some level that she says something dumb like this, like, they're no match against the fighting spirit of an Apache warrior. It doesn't work. I get what they're trying to do, but to me it kind of is goofy. But hot ninja babe that got flung in the background, I guess she decides it's time to dip. They've had enough, so a teleportation portal opens. She goes in. Fairchild picks up One-Eyed Jack, Three-Armed Dickhead, and Rake Dude, and throws them through the portal. And the hardball, or whatever the fuck this guy's name was, Grunge comes up and kicks him in the back, sending him through the portal, and the portal closes and they're gone, fight's over. And they're just kind of hanging out with each other like, well, aren't we a magnificent team? We've had our first battle, Master Lynch. They were many, but we kicked, we fought well. So now they're back at their headquarters, and this weird little rat thing is jumping on Lynch's face and like, isn't he cute? And Lynch is like, you're all stupid. That team of bad guys was willing to kill people to find it. So whatever this thing is, it's probably dangerous, and who knows what the hell is going on in our future. I'm sure we haven't seen the last of them. The end. So as a first issue, I mean, it's not the first issue. We had the mini-series. But as the first issue to the regular comic, it's just kind of okay. It's like they hang out. There's kind of stereotypical, like very cliche characterizations. And then bad guys show up and we have to fight them. And it's not really very violent. Not that it needs to be. But it's just kind of like a run-of-the-mill, like, we have to like introduce the characters and kind of show their powers in varying degrees and how they're slightly defeated, but then they ultimately win. And then the bad guys just get away and we're setting up future stuff. It's not really and truly mind-blowing. I'm kind of surprised it started out to be as popular as it was. But again, as I've said with every one of these books that Campbell's involved in the Gen 13 era, I say the popularity is due to his art. If this was like, I hate to like throw anybody else under the bus. There's a bunch of great artists that worked at Wildstorm. But if this was Ryan Benjamin drawing this, or Brett Booth, or even Jim Lee or Whilce Portacio, if it was anybody else drawing this, I don't think it's successful. I don't think anyone cares. That's my opinion. It's Campbell's whimsical, fun, playful art, his unique take on the hot girls, because everyone draws hot girls. Jim Lee especially, for the longest time, no one drew more beautiful women, in my opinion, than Jim Lee. But Campbell's got a unique take on that whole thing. So I've always said that this is only successful because of Campbell. And once he was gone, book tanked. And they tried to reboot it so many times, and it never worked. Even bringing on major, like, respected writers up to and including Chris Claremont, no one cared. No one gave a shit. It's all Campbell. You get a Joe Benitez pinup with inks by my boy Chuck Gibson. I didn't know that Benitez ever did anything over at Wildstorm. I'm going to say this must be some of his earliest works, because what Joe Benitez became very quickly, this is a far cry from it. And I'm going to guess that this is early Chuck Gibson inks, because it's not as good as he ends up being. And I know him, so I don't. He might watch this video, and I'm pretty sure he would probably agree. Like, it's not bad. It's just from a penciler and an inker and seeing what they become, this definitely kind of resembles early work that's not quite to the standards that they would get to, but it's kind of fine. But anyway, blah 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 blah. Book's over. Not bad. I'd give it a, I don't know, a 6 out of 10. But it gets better as it goes on for sure, art wise. And then it has occasional stories that are actually really awesome. And then it kind of goes back to Brandon Choi and Jim Lee writing bullshit boringness, gets involved in crossovers no one cares about. But there is a hint of something. The fun adventure, the element that Campbell wanted. He wanted to have fun adventure stories like the likes of which you'd see with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. And I feel like you can really feel Campbell's influence on it. But again, as it becomes more popular, they have to like keep a tighter control on it, which squeezes the life out of it. The more they pull control away from Campbell, who makes it interesting. And eventually, Campbell, he bounces and he goes and does Danger Girl and creates one of the best comic books I've ever read and the best in existence. Anyway, Gen 13 #1. It's kind of fine. You know, it has the beginnings of a lot of fun, and it was hyper popular. So that's all I got for now. Thanks for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. See you next time.